Hey guys, how are you? Welcome back to my channel. So I just got back from a really fantastic 3-day trip. I was lead and we flew on an A321 Airbus the first 2 days and a 320 today. And when you're in those positions as lead, you sit next to a flight attendant for a good part of your day. And, the first questions you ask someone you work with, hey, so how long have you been flying? And the other question is typically, so what did you do before you became a flight attendant? And so, we both asked those questions of each other and we chatted for quite a bit. And, it brought to mind so many of the flight attendant videos I see on YouTube, story times most likely, most often, about where people came from before they became a flight attendant and what they did and what their path was, their trajectory into becoming a flight attendant. And I thought, my story is so much more different than anybody else I've seen on Facebook or YouTube. It's so different that I thought I would film a little something about it, tell you a little bit about my story and how I became a flight attendant and where I came from. You all know, if you've watched my videos, I say it 1,000 times. I just adore my job. I love my job. I love my company. And I'm so grateful. And as you hear this, I wrote down a little timeline as to what happened so I could stay on some sort of track, because you know how I kind of go off on tangents. I wrote this little timeline down so I could sort of stay on track and let you know why I'm so grateful. And you'll probably have a better idea as to why I get so emotional about my airline and what opportunities they've given me. So, about 1,000 years ago, I was born in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, which is, I think, the inspiration for the TV show Family Guy. Quahog. It's basically Pawtucket, Rhode Island. I moved to Boston in 1992. Well before many of you were born. And my first job was selling hot sauce in a kiosk, like a little shack, inside Faneuil Hall Marketplace, which is sort of a place where you can kind of walk around seeing sort of the shadow of history in Boston. I sold hot sauce for $5 an hour. And the woman next to us on a cart selling cosmetics, makeup, she said something like, hey, Steven, every time someone leaves the kiosk, they leave with a little shopping bag and a smile. Would you think about working for me? I'll give you $1 more an hour. So for $6 an hour, I started selling cosmetics off a cart in Faneuil Hall. That gig ended not too long after the cart closed. And so I, using my experience there and some creative spin on my work history, which is me basically lying, I got a job at a beauty supply store. About 1.5 years later, I kind of used that experience and a little spin, also more lies. I became a makeup artist at a department store in Boston, Lord & Taylor, selling, at first time it was Estee Lauder. I moved over to Clarins. I love Clarins. And then I moved over to Clinique. And I adore Clinique. Many of the products I use today are actually still Clinique. It was working at Clinique that someone, I don't know who it was, brought me to someone's attention. This gentleman named, well, he wasn't really a gentleman. This guy named Dave Dodge was the cosmetic manager at Neiman Marcus in Boston. And he interviewed me for a position that had just opened up. Versace had just launched a cosmetic line in the States, and they were looking for a makeup artist for the sort of the regional area for Versace. And so I started selling Versace makeup and being a makeup artist at Neiman Marcus. And that was 1998, I guess. So in those 6 years, I went from selling hot sauce in a kiosk to working at one of the most prestigious department stores in the country. And it was really pretty fantastic. that was the high point for a real long time. I mean, when you work at Neiman Marcus, after a couple of years, it's kind of like, it's nothing special. You get very, very used to very, very expensive things, and it's not special. I left 8 years after starting there, and I fell into working for an optometrist, Dr. Luria, in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and his partner in business, Paul Fox. They taught me a bunch. They taught me so much. IQ Optical, EYEQ Optical in Harvard Square in Boston. And Paul now has a shop called Spectacle in Boston, which is amazing too. So I fell into that business, and once you get into optometry, it's hard to get out. It's a really fun industry, and I learned a ton. I did leave for a short time. I went to back into jewelry, into fashion jewelry, fine jewelry. David Yurman. I went to back to Neiman Marcus for a short time. Then I went back to IQ for a couple of years, back and forth in optometry. I ended up working at Saks Fifth Avenue for about a year and a half in fine jewelry. Then I got a phone call from out of the blue. I was kind of recruited to work for Dr. Rose in Vision Optometry in the financial district in Boston. And I became the lead sales and the buyer for the shop. And it was just wonderful. I stayed there for almost 3 years. But, you know, with all of these little job changes, nothing really changed. My life had been so on one note for so long. I had been in recovery from, I've mentioned, I think, a few times, I'm in recovery from alcohol. I've been in recovery for 15 years now, 15 and a half years. That's wonderful. I mean, it's a different life. It really is a different life. But, you know, after 10, 12 years of that, and after being in luxury for a real long time, there was just nothing else. And I hate to say I didn't have any hope, but I didn't have any hope for a future. I was never going to be able to retire. My work was fun, but not entirely satisfying. So I was having what I consider it a midlife renaissance. It wasn't quite a midlife crisis, not yet, but I call it a midlife renaissance. I'm going to coin that phrase. If you use it, give me credit. So I ended up, I was in a long distance relationship with a potter, someone who works with clay in Florida. And I was a potter in college for a short time when I did go to college. And so I ended up moving to Florida, and I threw myself at becoming an artist. And boy, it's hard. I'll tell you, it's very hard to just throw yourself into being an artist. After that, about 90 days, 3 months, that relationship ended abruptly, not by my choice. I was dumped very dramatically. I did not handle it well at all. I was working in a shop for $9 an hour, 30 hours a week. And after that relationship ended, I was making so little money that I found this dump, an absolute roach-infested, moldering hole in Tampa to live in. It was $400 a month. My car insurance, excuse me, my car insurance was like $180 a month for my little minivan. It's like a 15-year-old minivan. I just couldn't afford my life. My cell phone bill, my car insurance, my rent. I couldn't afford to feed myself. I couldn't afford to eat. There was a 7-Eleven near my house and my apartment, and that I shared with like 4 people. I can't even tell you. You think a crash pad is bad news? This place was horrifying. I had to hide stuff when I left the house every day. But I would go to 7-Eleven and I would buy, for $2, I'd buy 2 small slices of pizza, and I'd buy myself an Arizona iced tea. And that was my lunch, and that was my dinner. So I would spend like $5 or $6 a day on food. I wouldn't eat breakfast. That's how, don't I sound sexy? Isn't this sounding sexy? It gets worse. After living like that for a while, I had found a video on YouTube about people who were living in their cars by choice, because it was an easier, economical way of living and having a freedom, quote unquote freedom, to go where you wanted, do what you wanted. So it seemed like a solution, because I couldn't afford to pay rent or eat. So I had to choose one. And if you see my body type, I did not choose to give up eating. So in September 2016, I went to Walmart, bought myself a cot, a Coleman camp cot, put that in the back of the minivan. I cut my futon in half. There was a hinge, it kind of hinged in the middle. So I cut that down the middle, threw half of it on top of my cot. I had some plastic drawers, pots, pans. I had a little butane powered or fueled burner where I could cook. And I moved into my minivan. I know how I don't know how that sounds to you, but that's where my life led me. So that midlife renaissance, I in that time in Florida, I learned amazing things that were almost worth being homeless. I discovered I am a truly talented artist with clay. I discovered my voice in clay in my work. I just didn't have an opportunity any longer to actually make things as I had for the first most of the year in Florida. And that's very frustrating to have discovered what I had discovered and then be homeless and not have the ability to practice my art. It was hard. I can't even tell you. It was difficult. I slept in Walmart parking lots when I could. I slept, I would go to, or a Planet Fitness parking lot because they're open 24 hours. And I would shower and work out every day at Planet Fitness. So I had an amazing body. I was homeless, but I was working out every day. I looked great. It was hard. And, but that was, let's see, September, October, November, December, 2016. I was lying to everyone. I was lying to my boss. I was lying to what few friends I had. I had a boyfriend for a little while. I was lying to him about where I was living. I was sleeping in my van. I would go wherever I went, and then I would say, hey, I'm going home, and I would just drive somewhere and sleep in my car. Whatever. One of my best friends and someone who truly saved my life, really truly saved my life, my friend Steven has a house in Atlanta. He's fairly well off. He's very humble. He would never tell you he's fairly wealthy, but he's fairly wealthy. Has this big giant house in Buckhead in Atlanta. And he said, Steven, come up and spend Christmas with us. So I went up to Atlanta that Christmas of 2016. And he has a house in the mountains, of the Smoky Mountains as well. So we went up to the Smoky Mountains and spent Christmas morning on the deck looking out over the tops of these mountains with the smoke and the clouds and the mists surrounding the top of those mountains and the hills. And I just remember looking down at those clouds with such peace and so much relief, because it was really a big moment. I kind of thought, like, you know what? Things are going to change. Things have to improve. They have to get better. And they did. He invited me to move into the third floor of their house in Buckhead. So I did. While I was in Atlanta, trying to prepare for my future life in Atlanta, I applied for jobs everywhere. Every luxury place I could find, I applied. I did get a job offer at Saks Fifth Avenue in fine jewelry. I left Saks Fifth Avenue. I should have been thrilled. I should have been over the moon. I had a place to move into, a real home to move into, where I'd be loved, where I would have friends, where I had two of the cutest little dogs in the world. And I had this job offer. I really should have been over the moon, and I just wasn't. I didn't want to work behind a jewelry counter for the rest of my life. I just didn't want to. Didn't want to work anywhere where I was not valued really by anybody if I couldn't produce a lot of items. If I couldn't sell a lot. It's flat commission. And our customers, they don't care about their jewelry. They just care about what they look like at a party. They don't care about me. But I left the store thinking, well, great, I have a job. I won't be homeless. And I left the store. I happened to look down at my phone, and there was an email from an airline I had applied to. I had applied to Delta, a couple other airlines, because I was in Atlanta. And I applied to a couple other airlines just kind of to cover my bases, and as well as I had other places. And there was an email from the company I work for. Wow. There was an email from them saying, we'd like to learn more about you. Please come to this hiring event in Fort Lauderdale on January 10th. And I went back to Florida to kind of gather my things. I told Saks I would start in a couple weeks. And so I gathered my things, and I was preparing to move up to Atlanta, but I drove down to that job interview with this airline on a whim, just in case, and it just felt right. And I drove down there. I slept in a parking lot of a Planet Fitness. I had a navy pinstripe suit, a white shirt, a red tie, pressed and ironed, hanging in the car. I slept in the parking lot, woke up at 4 a.m., showered and shaved, got dressed at the gym, went to the job interview for the hiring event, and I got a conditional job offer. I got Miss CJO, and I remember every moment. Of that day. And every time I go on Facebook or something and I hear someone complain, boy, what do you mean this airline isn't going to pay for my airline ticket to my interview? What do you mean they're not going to put me up in a hotel? I want this job so bad. I want to be a flight attendant so bad. But what do you mean they're not going to pay for my way? What do you mean they're not going to make it easy for me to get this job? I can't even respond to those comments without being rude. So I'm gonna not tell you what I think about that. But you just heard part of my story. So I got my conditional job offer. Driving back from that conditional job offer, my car died. My house died. I was driving my house, right? South of Lake Okeechobee, my car died. It was a terminal transmission. And thankfully a friend drove down to get me, brought me back. And I spent the next couple weeks at a friend's house until I actually moved up to Atlanta that February. And I spent February practicing schematics and terminology. And it was a whole month, of not being homeless. It was a month being surrounded by friends and cute little puppies, cute little dogs. It was a month being spent in a beautiful home, surrounded by trees and a garden, and it was beautiful. It was beautiful. And my friends really made it possible that I set myself up for success. And then I went off to training on March 1st in Fort Lauderdale. And the rest is history. I became a flight attendant. I was based here in Las Vegas. And I spent the first 8 months in crash pads. And then I had enough money to get a studio apartment here in Las Vegas, and my friend Steven still lets me, well, I still consider that third floor in his house in Buckhead home. So I kind of live there. I have a lot of my stuff there. I have a lot of my stuff here. And I'm now a flight attendant, of all things, where everything I've ever done seems to have kind of aimed me towards what I do now. Every element of customer service I've ever learned has brought me here. Every moment of empathy and love for people I don't even know that I've learned in recovery, I've been able to apply to my job here. It's my whole life has led me towards this point of being a flight attendant, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's beautiful. I gotta tell you, I'm blessed beyond words. Being a flight attendant is worth every tear I've shed. It's worth almost every night spent sleeping in a car. There were a couple nights that were pretty scary and pretty tough. It's been worth broken relationships. It's worth all of that. It really is. It really is. So there's my story time. I don't know if I could be any less sexy right now. Not that I'm ever really sexy or attractive, but you know what? My story is very different, I think, than most or any other flight attendant I've met on YouTube. And the reason I kind of share the whole story is I eventually would like you guys to know a lot about me, because, you know, I don't know. I feel like I know a lot of the flight attendants I follow on YouTube. I really do almost consider them like virtual friends. I wouldn't mind being your friend. Hi. So I want to share some of myself with you that is more than just tips on how to get a job as a flight attendant. And I'd like to encourage people who don't think they have a chance or don't think that life is giving them the opportune chance to grab their dream if being a flight attendant is what they want to do. I'd like to give you some encouragement that nothing is impossible. Nothing is impossible. You don't have to have everything set up perfectly to do this. You can just want to do this bad enough and it will fall into place with a little work, with dependence upon your higher power, whatever that might be, and your dependence upon friends and family. Let them help you. If you have anyone to help you, let them help you. Let them know you need help. Otherwise, they won't help you, right? All right, so I've already talked for long enough. I don't know if I really want you guys to leave comments. I really don't even know if I want to hear, because I'm afraid that I may have overshared, honestly, overstepped my bounds of intimacy with you guys on YouTube. But there you go. That's who I am. So welcome to more of Steven. My next video, if you subscribe, you'll know. A video I might film tomorrow or the day after. I made some other notes in terms of work and why I love my job. And the notes I wrote here, I actually wrote a title down, so it might be what I titled it in the next video, is How My Wings Changed My Life. And I have quite a few pages of notes here, so I might edit those before I start talking. All right, so I have talked long enough. So, okay, so I'm going to leave the comment section open. If you're going to leave a comment, please be nice. Don't say anything negative or nasty. If you have any questions, certainly feel free, let me know. I'll do what I can to answer. I try to keep up with the comments. And yeah, say hi, subscribe, and let's be friends, right? Okay, now fly safe until I see you later. Bye.